Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. Got a great show for you guys on this Monday evening. Fun stuff. So we're going to talk about how Donald Trump is the laziest president ever. That's fun. We have AOC versus Dan Crenshaw. So that's fun. We'll talk about Cardi B versus Tomi Lahren. Again, the feud continues, and I love it. And I was not able to actually do the first part of the feud, so it's fun to actually talk about this. Then more serious stuff. We got Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer teaming up to go after corporations. That's the stuff that I like to see. And then finally, we have disastrous news on the environmental front. We have a new possible interior secretary. And you're not going to be surprised that he's a lobbyist. So that's not good. But other stuff we have is fun. So it's great to do that after the weekend. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. I did not watch the Super Bowl. I'm not going to do Super Bowl commercial recap or anything like that. Not really interested. You know what I did on Sunday? I watched Ancient Aliens and played World of Warcraft. So if you like, you can't get nerdier than that. Maybe if I was involved in like a D&D, you know, like if I was like the DM or something at a D&D match. But no, I guess that would be nerdier than what I did. But nonetheless, I had a fun time. Hopefully you all had a fun time. And, you know, hopefully the Patriots, you know, when they get to the White House, they will actually have warm hamburgers this time instead of cold ones. So that should be fun. I can't wait till they go to the White House for dinner. We'll see what happens. Will they get Carl's Jr. or Jack in the Box this time? Or will they go with steamed hams like they did last time? Yeah. So that's fun. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed the weekend. So, but I'm glad to be back. Like I said, we're going to do some fun stories. And before we get into some of those stories, I want to thank the patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank all of you guys for being patrons and supporting the show. You guys are the backbone of the show. And there's a lot of you, so I want to thank all of you for doing that. Now, we also have channel memberships. We have 15 members, gained a couple over the weekend. That's awesome. Crypto Mojito, thank you for becoming a channel member. And Mike T, 122. So thank you, Mike and Crypto. So those are the new channel members. And then, of course, we've got some donations for the camera, Jacqueline Levitt, and an anonymous donor. So thank you, anonymous donor and Jacqueline, for donating to the camera fund. So we're thinking once we get the funds, we'll take a little bit. We'll try to get the best camera and the best bang for the buck. So and so what we can do is get basically the best camera that we can for the best price point. And so we'll have that camera, and then I'll be able to do some live events with it and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to primary season and actually using it. I plan to go to these, you know, rallies when they come to Michigan anyway. But now it'll be so much nicer actually having a decent camera to actually do these, you know, record these events for you guys and post them online. So looking forward to it. Maybe I can score an interview here and there to whoever comes to Michigan, which will be interesting this primary. So especially considering how we got a lot of people, a lot of politicians that are running in 2020 on the Democratic side. Bernie Sanders has yet to jump in, but maybe I could possibly score an interview with Bernie. I don't know. I've been trying to chase him around and catch him every time he's in Michigan, but he's a slippery old man. I'll give him that. Very slippery. So it's hard to catch him. Anyway, so like and share the stream too, by the way. and all that. All right. So now let's get into the first story. Let's talk about Trump's schedule. So that's fun. Okay. An unprecedented White House leak has just revealed how little President Trump actually works. Well, as if this is that much of a surprise, which it's not. Now, according to Axios, Trump spends a lot of time that he's supposed to be working doing something called executive time. Now, I've talked about executive time before. Well, how much? Apparently, he spends over half of his time. Over half. Again, he's supposed to be working, but yet he is actually spending time doing executive time. What's executive time? So that's basically unstructured time where President Trump gets to do whatever he wants. And that, I love how that's like a bit of an Orwellian name for him just basically kicking his feet back and watching Fox and Friends. But that's what it is. Now, Trump, according to these leaked documents, often wakes before 6 a.m. However, he's never in the Oval Office during those hours, according to 6 different sources with direct knowledge. Instead, he spends his morning in the residence, watching TV, reading the papers, which I highly doubt, and responding to what he sees and reads by phoning aides, members of Congress, friends, administration officials, and informal advisors. So let me sum that up. So basically, he watches Fox and Friends, live tweets about what they're talking about, while eating cheeseburgers, drinking Diet Coke, and doing nothing till about 11. That's Donald Trump's day. Get up at 6, BS around for hours, and then eventually goes to a meeting. Now, the first meeting of the day, of course, is usually around 11:30, is often an intelligence briefing or a 30-minute meeting with his chief of staff. Now, look, I don't think those intelligence briefings go for that long, especially since he counteracts everything he gets from the intelligence briefing, doesn't pay attention, and then he recently just said, I don't need intelligence. Well, you don't really have any to begin with, to be fair. But anyway, how much time is he spending in executive time? Since November 7th, the day after the midterm elections, Trump has spent a total of 297 hours in executive time. That's according to the 51 private schedules obtained by Axios. Now, this is not hearsay. This is, we've got the schedules, we know exactly what he's doing with his time, and apparently it ain't much. Now, for those same schedules, Trump has had about 77 hours scheduled for meetings that include policy planning, legislative strategy, and video recordings. Let me guess that the policy planning and legislative strategy isn't actually that. It's a bunch of people that are probably trying to talk to Trump with him not listening. With him probably doodling on his papers. Are we done yet? I want to go watch Fox and Friends. Now, some days they say executive time totally predominates. For instance, he had an hour of scheduled meetings on January 18th with Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and a total of 7 hours of executive time. 7 hours. Now, look, it would be different if President Trump actually used that time to study policy issues and maybe read up on different bills and initiatives. It's not like he doesn't have time to become informed. It's just that he's not interested in becoming informed. He's not interested in following up on policy. Instead, he's watching Steve Doocy and Brian Kilmeade. That's what's going on. He watches Fox News basically constantly. And guess what? He also calls Fox hosts, and they inform him about policy. You're getting policy from watching Fox News. Dear God, man. Ugh. Now, Another example, the day after the midterms, Trump's schedule had 30 minutes for a chief of staff meeting and more than 7 hours of executive time. Now, the White House says, and you'll love their defense, right? See, executive time is basically time that's unstructured where Donald Trump can be creative and come up with new policies because he works differently than everybody else. Now, you tell me, based on his tweets, based on his apparent lack of knowledge when he talks for even his own policies or his administration's own policies. For example, the failed GOP healthcare plan that he literally knew almost nothing about. You tell me that he's using his executive time to be more creative. Come on, you don't believe that. Even MAGA guys, you don't believe that. You don't believe that. I know you'll come out and you'll froth and you'll type furiously saying, "No, Jeff, you're wrong. He's the hardest working president ever." But you don't believe that. You don't believe that. You look at the guy who is lazy while you're busting your butt, while you're working, right? This guy is literally sitting on his butt, eating cheeseburgers or hamburgers, and watching Fox and Friends. Don't you wish you could be doing that instead? But no, you got this guy who's a couch potato as the president of the United States. I suppose as progressives, we should be lucky because, look, maybe it's better off that he's lazy and doesn't actually get anything done. Because imagine if he were both as evil as he is, but competent. I guess thankfully he's not. But no, speaking of being lazy as hell, let me actually give you some examples of that, right? So according to different aides, he would skim newspaper articles, news summaries, and bullet points. So that's because he won't read anything longer. So, and of course, before, what we learned from, aides and leaks from the White House is that he wouldn't read things unless they had his name peppered in. He just couldn't pay attention. He doesn't have an attention span unless it's about himself. Now, there's more. According to a former senior White House official, he said, quote, "Trump does review briefing materials, at least if you make it a point to have him do so. But only if you talk and guide him through as he's reading." So that sounds like something a kindergarten teacher has to do with a student. Let me just guide you through this. Here's a big word. Here's how to pronounce a big word that you don't understand. He's a child. And that's not to be, insulting towards children. But he literally has a child mentality. There's something wrong with this dude. Where you have to, literally guide him through a policy briefing. Or he won't do it. Because he doesn't understand it. Because he doesn't have any intellectual curiosity. And he's also not a very stable genius. There's more. Trump also receives national security materials and news summaries every evening. But the package is more visual than his predecessors, with screenshots from the Drudge Report homepage, pictures of his own tweets, and snapshots of cable news chyrons from throughout the day, according to people who have seen these nightly briefing packages. So, notice that? It's old pictures of what cable news and Drudge Report is saying about him. All visual, nothing to do with actual policy. And look, why is he lazy? Well, for one, he's not very bright. But two, he's actually used to being lazy. See, the thing is, when he was a CEO, he would just be used to ordering people around, and they would all scurry to do what he wanted them to do. And not even actually so. Sometimes he'll just tell people to do things that is so off the wall and wrong and sometimes illegal that they say, well, we're not going to do it. They say later on, well, we're not going to do it. And they don't, but they tell him, yes, we are going to do it. Yes, sir. So we'll do it. We'll do it. And then when you don't do it right, or when you actually do what he tells you to do, and it blows up in his face, well, then he blames you. That's what it's like working for Donald Trump. Now, it's different here in politics because, well, again, it's politics. Everybody has an agenda. They don't work for you. There are people that actually work against you, in fact. And look, the fact that the schedule was leaked to the press in the first place shows you that there is somebody there who is not a fan of Donald Trump working in the White House. All that backstabbing and basically political gamesmanship, it's not something that he's used to. Again, he's used to people jumping and following his orders at the drop of a hat. He does not have that. Now, as to who is leaking this, you guys know I think it's Kellyanne Conway. I don't have any information. I don't have any proof. But come on, man. I'm almost now completely convinced that it is Kellyanne Conway that is leaking to the press. I think the only other person besides the White House leaker that leaks to the press this much is Trump himself. He's like the second biggest leaker in the White House. Now, of course, they say, oh, well, he's being unconventional. No, it's not just as if he has a new leadership style that he's being unconventional. No, he's literally dumb, and he is too dumb to be in a position of that much power. They got to invoke the 25th, man. You got to get rid of this guy. Because, look, the adults in the room keep leaving. John Kelly and so many of the other staffers who have actually tried to keep him in check are gone. How many more are going to go? How many more before all the adults are gone and we are basically stuck with him and his worst impulses? Got to get him out of there. 25th Amendment now. Okay. One more related story here. Now, the White House is apparently in chaos following the president's private schedules, the release of those private schedules by the White House leaker that showed that the president was spending over half of his time basically doing nothing. Now, Axios recently published 95 pages of Trump's private schedules on Sunday, and sources told the website that following day that the leak has basically caused a lot of drama inside the White House. Now, Cliff Sims, he recently wrote a book exposing a lot of what happened inside of the White House. He was a former White House aide. He said, quote, about this, there are leaks, and then there are leaks. If most are involuntary manslaughter, this was premeditated murder. People inside are genuinely scared. That is kind of an awesome quote. Now, sources told Axios that the leak had set off a round of finger pointing, and that's what that means, more intense than anything since the White House anonymous New York Times op-ed. So, you guys remember that. That was only a few months ago. But it feels like 12 years ago. It doesn't help that the month of January felt like a year in its own right. But this is the speed of chaos that is going on inside the White House. I mean, it's complete insanity and complete drama. I couldn't imagine actually working in that environment. It would make me do probably things like this, like leak to the press. I mean, come on. But again, that chaos, right? Now think of how funny it is that 2 years later, after they, basically launched their war against leakers, against White House leakers, that they still haven't actually found the White House leaker. With all the departures in the administration over the past 2 years, they still haven't found him. Who's left? Now, look, maybe there was a ton of leakers already. And so they've been, leaving one by one, and there's still one left. I don't know, man. Who knows? I mean, look, the people that are left can't be low-level staffers or coffee boys. And tell me what coffee boy has access to the president's private meeting schedules. Seriously. No, this is somebody that's high placed in the White House and somebody the president actually trusts that might be in the inner circle. Imagine that. And look, there are not that many people who fit the bill. You guys know who I think it is. But who knows? Whoever it is, they've obviously rattled the White House once again. And it's absolutely perfect. It's great. All right. Now, enough on that. Let's go to another story here. Let's change gears. So Representative Dan Crenshaw is a Texas Republican, and he decided to go toe-to-toe with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. As usual, that did not go well. Now, this whole thing started during the Super Bowl, right? When Crenshaw attempted to apply AOC's proposal for a 70% marginal tax rate to the New England Patriots, right? So they won the Super Bowl. Now, in the tweet, he said, quote, "Should someone propose a 70% tax on the Patriots so that NFL competition is more fair and equal? Asking for a friend." I always hate the asking for a friend thing. You're asking, not your friend. Or else your friend would actually ask. But anyway, it's a dumb tweet. Why? Because it literally makes no sense to conflate winning the Super Bowl to actually having a marginal tax rate. It makes something that is inherently shouldn't be political, stupidly political. So here we go. Now, AOC, of course, immediately had a response to this, and you'll love it. She says the average NFL salary is $2.1 million. Most players would never experience a 70% rate. The owners who refused to hire Colin Kaepernick would, though. Oh, that's a good response. I love it. For one, Kaepernick has been blackballed by a lot of the racist owners of these NFL teams. They would rather, play fealty to Donald Trump and this anti-Kaepernick sentiment for him kneeling during the national anthem to actually highlight police brutality against African Americans. So bringing him up, that's an excellent move. Especially considering talking about football and the Super Bowl. But also that 70% tax rate, again, it's not even a proposal, it's just an idea, right, that she has talked about to maybe pay for the Green New Deal. Now, that tax rate would kick in for any dollar over $10 million. So she's right. Even these millionaire players would not be subject to this tax. But the owners would. So I love it. Now, here's the thing that they're trying to do, right? So this idea, along with higher estate taxes, scares the crap out of billionaires, right? They're so scared that they pay Republican politicians like Dan Crenshaw to feign outrage on behalf of the American people. Now, the same American people, by the way, who massively support increasing taxes on wealthy people, for example, the owners of some of these NFL teams. In fact, there's a new poll today that came out where a massive majority of Americans said, yes, let's tax the rich. We're fine with that. In fact, I think that would be best for the country. But speaking of the American people, social media weighed in, and I love some of these responses. Adam Bonin points out how the NFL actually, and how these teams especially, are actually not as capitalist as Dan Crenshaw and some of the Republicans might actually think. In fact, they said, the NFL has revenue sharing, a salary cap, and team spending floors, and a player entry draft designed to reward the weakest team. Quote, that's socialism, not capitalism. Kevin M. Cruz says, I've seen politicians make it clear they don't understand sports. I've seen ones make it clear they don't understand taxes. But I'm not sure I've ever seen someone do both at once. Congrats. Zane says, I'm not sure which is worst. One, you've never heard of a salary cap. Two, you think progressive taxes tax all income at the highest rate, which they do not. Three, snarkily using asking for a friend about something you actually don't understand. Brian Sims says, quote, it takes even less than 140 characters to say, I'm in Congress, but still don't know what I'm talking about. See, much more efficient than making us guess every time you tweet. That's great. Austin Peterson says, how about we just stop giving teams our tax dollars for stadiums and call it even? Now, that's a great point. I've talked about that before. Right now, the taxpayer subsidizes these billion-dollar stadiums for these NFL teams. Why are we doing that? Why are we as taxpayers paying for private teams? I mean, it's especially when at a time when people don't have health care, especially at a time where there are people who are rationing their insulin. I mean, it doesn't make any sense unless you realize that our government is bought by corporations and the wealthy. But there's more. Jack Schwei says, your friend is ill-informed and doesn't know about draft picks, revenue sharing, and salary caps. He should watch more football. Love it. Then Toronto says, do you ever get the feeling that people are laughing at you and not with you? All the time. All the time. No, I'm kidding. For Chief, this is it, says, learn how marginal tax rates work. The NFL is revenue sharing between teams to the tunes of billions of dollars. The NFL is unionized. The NFL has a hard salary cap on player incomes. Stop this before you hurt yourself. That's also fun. Moose says, ask your friend what a marginal tax rate is. I'm sure he would probably explain to you, Dan. Then Scott Gilman says, tell your friend at 70% income above $10 million. It sounds like your friend isn't very bright. Mike Drucker says, oldest time being mad at kneeling football players, and you guys never thought to once look up how the NFL works. Blanket Man says, and I love this one, quote, do you have to work extra hard to get this owned? And then Adam G makes a great point here. He says, I see Senator Ted Cruz has competition for most embarrassing and uninformed elected official from Texas. You guys forgot Louis Gohmert. We don't hear much of Louis Gohmert anymore, but I can guarantee he's still crazy. Dude is still super crazy. And then finally, TGB, not finally actually, says, is it fun to have a Twitter reply section that always 100% roasts of you and your stupid ideas? And then finally, Joe Poznansky says, my consulting service for preventing people from saying stupid sports things remains available. I might have to check that out because I don't know much about sports either, to be fair. But I do know a little bit about marginal taxes. And what I can tell you is that Dan Crenshaw is basically just standing for the billionaires and millionaires who desperately don't want to see their taxes go up. So that's who's going to be affected by this if it ever gets passed into law. And we are going to push for it. Absolutely. Because we need to actually tax the millionaires and billionaires. And we actually have the American people on our side. So it will happen eventually. And when it does, expect massive tears from Republicans and from the rich. Okay. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got the fun Cardi B story. And then we'll get into Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, going after corporations, especially considering what they spent their tax cuts on, and then more stuff. So we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll do more stories. Stay right here. Send your super chats. I will read them, and your comments. And okay, we'll be right back. Around the Nation. welcome back to the show, everybody. Okay, don't have any super chats to read. That's okay. So I think we will kind of dive back in. I am seeing reports of troll activity, but I don't actually see any. So I don't know what that's about. But I can tell you. Never mind. Let's keep going. That just gets into a whole dorky discussion about trolls and World of Warcraft lore. I'm sure you're not interested. Let's move. All right. So let's go to Cardi B. I love this story. So Tomi and Lahren and rapper Cardi B have a little bit of a feud going, and it's kind of hilarious. Now, this most recent piece of this feud happened a couple of days ago after Tomi and Lahren had mocked the arrest of a fellow rapper. Now, this story is a rapper 21 Savage, right? So I've never heard of him, but apparently he's like a UK citizen, and he also is in America, and apparently he overstayed his visa. So now ICE had arrested him, and they plan on possibly deporting him. Oh, like I said, it's a bit of a strange story, but as I've told you guys before, the majority of people who end up becoming undocumented immigrants do so by overstaying their visas. Apparently, 21 Savage is one of those people. Again, that's the majority. I think only about 38% of all undocumented immigrants actually have come through the border, right? And that number has been declining for the last few decades. So, look, there's not a lot of people that actually cross the border. Yes, we had recent surges with the unaccompanied children, but overall, immigration from Mexico and people crossing the Mexican border are way down. The actual problem, I guess you could say, is, well, we have people overstaying their visas like 21 Savage. But anyway, getting to the feud between Tomi Lahren and Cardi B, which I think you guys are going to guess whose side I'm on. Lahren was basically tweeting out using one of 21 Savage's songs called Bank Account to mock him. Now, he said, she tweeted, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ICE agents ready to deport you. Now, look, I don't know. I've never listened to the song, so I don't know how the lyrics go. But generally, not funny, right? I actually wonder if she understands the irony of him overstaying his visa. Well, now in response, of course, Cardi B had tweeted simply, quote, don't make me get my leash. Now, that's great. Look, it's great because during the shutdown, Cardi B released a video where she went after Donald Trump for shutting down the government. And now that, of course, caused Tomi to get all offended and lead to attacking her, which led to Cardi tweeting this, leave me alone, I will dog walk you. I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means to dog walk somebody, but it sounds hilarious. And of course, there were memes of like Tomi Lahren's face put on a dog with Cardi B walking her. It's great. Hilarious. Look, I'm an old guy. I'm not with it. Okay. But I've never listened to Cardi B's music, but I actually respect where she is politically. She's actually a lot smarter than a lot of people give her credit for, especially the right wing. But look, she told her supporters back in 2016 to vote for Bernie. So she's a Bernie Sanders supporter. So look, already I actually like her politics. And again, looking out for when she released that video during the shutdown, looking out for the people affected by the shutdown. And you didn't see Tomi Lahren actually talking about that. No, you saw Tomi talking about how we need to get a wall, we need to get a border security. So I'm on Team Cardi. Then again, of course, you would never see me supporting Tomi Lahren anyway. I think there was one time where I defended her when she got fired from The Blaze. Now, why did I defend Tomi Lahren? That's an interesting question. It's actually because she came out as pro-choice. Look at that. See? I actually can't agree with Tomi when it comes to something, right? Being pro-choice. But anyway, now one more tweet here. This is actually a Twitter user named Frederick Joseph. Now, he pointed out Tomi's hypocrisy by showing a video, or at least a screenshot from a video, of Tomi Lahren rapping along with 21 Savage. Oops. Oh, apparently you used to be a fan. Awesome. He tweeted out, "This is interesting because you had no problem with 21 Savage when your ass was rapping along with him. You're a sham. Where's the lie? Oh, look, I've been saying all along. Tomi is a fake, a fraud. She is a female Dave Rubin. So she sold out her generation, young people, for some of that sweet right-wing cash. And what's interesting about this, and kind of sad, is that she's going to be impacted by climate change long after the people who are currently paying her off die. But I guess her and Rubin, well, they're going to make a boatload of money before that happens from, corporations and wealthy right-wing billionaires. So I guess she'll be fine while the rest of us burn. So you want to see who Tomi Lahren really is? Well, that's it. Okay. And thanks for you guys for instructing me on what dog walking someone means. Hilarious. I told you I'm kind of an old, out of touch guy. I'm like 2 steps away from yelling at people to get off my lawn. So that's sad. If I had a lawn. But anyway, let us continue here. All right. So now to more serious policy, substantive issues, even though I've had some fun stuff. But anyway. Yeah, Dave Rubin. Ugh, that guy. All right. So Senate Democrats are proposing legislation that would stop companies from doing stock buybacks. Now, under the condition, of course, they could do stock buybacks if they start paying their workers $15 an hour. If not, they would be banned from doing so. So now that is awesome. So here you have Senator Bernie Sanders, of course, who is behind nearly every great piece of legislation, or who has co-sponsored every great piece of legislation, teaming up with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Oh, Chuck Schumer, finally doing something good. In fact, they both outlined their plan in a New York Times op-ed published on Sunday. Now, the proposal, they said, would put preconditions on a company's ability to buy back their own shares. Now, they said in the op-ed, quote, "Our legislation would set minimum requirements for corporate investment in workers and the long-term strength of the company as a precondition for a corporation entering into a share buyback program. Now, the goal is to curtail the over-reliance on buybacks while incentivizing the productive investment of corporate capital." So now, basically, what's going on here is after Trump tax cuts that saved rich people corporations over $1.5 trillion, these companies announced $1 trillion in stock buybacks. Now, stock buybacks is the preferred method of rich people investing their money because, look, that immediately goes to shareholders and executives. They make tons and tons of money, and it also inflates the stock value of the company. Now, the company is no more better financially off than they were before the stock buyback. It's not that they're making more sales. It's not that they're doing better. It's just that they're inflating their own stock and driving up the value, to which then the executives cash out. So now, at least in this bill, if they're going to do that, then you at least got to pay your workers a living wage. So I think that's great. Now, last year, as I said before, these companies did $1 trillion worth of buybacks instead of spending that money on investing in their workers, giving bonuses. Yes, there were companies that actually gave up very, very slight bonuses that were really, really small, that are basically comparable to crumbs. Now, the crumbs of the corporation, but an extra $1,000 for somebody making $10, $11 an hour, it's pretty significant, but it's also a lot less than they deserve, and actually comes out to be so much less than actually raising their pay rate or giving them some sort of benefits, for example, better healthcare benefits, etc. So again, crumbs, right? Now, there's more here. Let me give you an example of a company that did that. Walmart had announced $20 billion in share buybacks as it was laying off hundreds and closing Sam's Club stores. And that's the other part of this, right? So after Trump and the Republicans passed those tax cuts, they ended up still laying people off. Well, now, wait a minute. The conservative argument is, well, we're going to increase hiring, we're going to increase wages, and we're going to give out bonuses thanks to these tax cuts. The stuff that we couldn't do before. That was obviously a lie. The Trump tax cuts had no effect on hiring. And actually, we ended up losing jobs in a lot of places. In fact, you had a plant in Kansas from Harley-Davidson that ended up closing. You also had Wells Fargo. You had AT&T. You had a lot of these large corporations that ended up shedding tons of jobs, thousands of jobs, sometimes tens of thousands. And all while, of course, buying back their own stocks and having their executives get rich. So, look, this is something that we should actually be doing something about. So I actually like it that Bernie Sanders, and yes, even Chuck Schumer, because I got to give him credit, are basically having this bill, backing this bill that would actually be more, or cause a little bit more corporate responsibility. I like it. I don't know if it'll pass. I don't think it'll pass the Senate for sure. But nonetheless, I think it's a good effort, and I think it's a conversation we need to talk about going into 2020. How to make these companies a little bit more accountable. Because believe me, there are ways that we could actually make it far worse for corporations. We could completely ban stock buybacks or propose legislation for that. At least under this, they would still be able to do that and still make money, but they got to shift some towards their workforces. So, look, it's either you come to us when we propose something, or we come at you and we really come after you. Because we're tired of living in a corporate oligarchy, right? We're tired of all the gains going to the wealthy and corporations. It's about time that we have a more even distribution of wealth. It's about time that we go after the companies that are keeping all the profits for themselves and depriving the workers of what should be a fair pay. So now I want to read a quote here from the senator's statement on this. In the op-ed, they said, at a time of huge income and wealth inequality, Americans should be outraged that these profitable corporations are laying off workers while spending billions to boost their stock's value to further enrich the wealthy few. And that's exactly what's happening, and that's exactly the situation we need to resolve. So I love this piece of legislation, and I hope it continues to start a conversation going into 2020 about what we can do to actually hold these greedy corporations and CEOs accountable. Okay. Speaking of corporations. All right. So President Trump is now eyeing a former energy lobbyist to become the new Interior Department's secretary. Now, this is David Bernhardt, and he is basically a former oil lobbyist, and he's also actually serving as the agency's deputy secretary. So he's already been basically running the Interior Department after Ryan Zinke had left, thanks to all of Zinke's scandals of wasting taxpayer money. Now, Bernhardt, according to an article here, whose past clients, this is an article in The Hill, include oil companies and others with business before the Interior Department, will lead the agency that oversees about 500 million acres, as well as the energy production on that land. Oh, so great. Here we have somebody who worked for the oil companies as a lobbyist, now in charge of the land that these oil companies will extract energy from. Here we go again, right? Now, that department has about 70,000 employees in various agencies and oversees federal land, offshore drilling, endangered species, and American Indian affairs, among other duties. As deputy secretary, Bernhardt, a native of Colorado, worked hand-in-hand with Zinke on his oil and gas leasing agenda and took the lead on many others, including the administration's push to drill in the Arctic. This is the ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and the rollback of a number of Endangered Species Act regulations. You guys know the Endangered Species Act. It's there to protect species that we have put in danger through our, exploitive, like mining, logging, all that stuff, where we gather natural resources. We have put these animals in danger of extinction. Bernhardt says, I don't care. I don't give a crap about that. We need to extract more resources. We need to make more money. And by we, I mean people who represent the oil companies, because that's who he worked for. And now that he's in the Trump government, and that he is very, very likely, now that the Republicans control the Senate, to be appointed to that position permanently. And what's different from him and Zinke is, even though that they have the same policy positions, he's just far less openly corrupt. He's actually still corrupt, but in the way of, well, the natural Washington corruption, meaning he takes money from corporations, and he's going to end up working for those corporations, both while in office, doing their bidding, and now, once he leaves office, he will also go back to lobbying on behalf of those corporations and get tons of money, giant checks. So now, going back to the Endangered Species Act, he said, quote, that the ESA is an unnecessary regulatory burden. And he has proposed a rule change that would make it easier to delist an endangered species and would withdraw a policy that offered the same protections for threatened species as for endangered species, unless otherwise specified. Now, his previous clients included Eni Petroleum, Sempra Energy, Halliburton. You guys recognize that from Dick Cheney, Target Energy, Noble Energy, and the Westlands Water District, which apparently has nothing to do with actually water. And he had worked at the lobbying firm Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck LLP. Now, he says he has recused himself under the ethics standards for anything that actually involved his former clients. Nonetheless, this guy should not be in that position. I know, of course, Donald Trump would never actually appoint anybody who isn't dirty with oil money or coal money. I mean, look at the EPA administrator, also a former coal lobbyist who worked for Murray Energy. So no matter who or basically no matter who is picked, there's going to be somebody in the industry that actually doesn't care about the environment. And that's what's so disastrous about having somebody like Donald Trump running the government. Nonetheless, there were some critics, environmentalist groups, that chimed in. They said, and this is Jennifer Rucala, executive director of the Center for Western Priorities. They said David Bernhardt's nomination is an affront to America's parks and public lands. As an oil and gas lobbyist, Bernhardt pushed to open vast swaths of public lands for drilling and mining. As deputy secretary, he was behind some of the worst policy decisions of Secretary Zinke's sad tenure, including stripping protections for imperiled wildlife. Now, you want to see who's supportive of Bernhardt? Giant energy corporations. For example, you had Mike Sommers, president of the American Petroleum Institute, telling reporters, quote, "We have always been supportive of acting Secretary Bernhardt. We supported his nomination and would support him if the president decides to nominate him to be secretary." They also say that his agenda on fossil fuels would be in the same vein as Zinke, and so therefore they would be in favor of it. They said, like a CEO and a COO, he has been intimately involved in designing the details of these policies and putting them in place throughout the bureaucracy. So he is more than capable. Oh, he's so experienced at selling out to corporations. Look, I don't think, for somebody who is supposed to be Interior Secretary, it shouldn't, I think it should be disqualifying that if you're a CEO or COO. Because that's not what the job should be about. It should actually be about managing these lands in a responsible way. And this is what we're not getting from Republicans. This is not what we're getting from the Trump administration. And yes, this is not what we're getting also from corporate Democrats. We need to actually have progressives who, and look, I don't even care if they have what their ideology is to an extent. And I know you say, wait a minute, that's crazy. Ideology matters. No, what matters is that they take their job seriously at protecting the wildlife, right? Protecting these areas and actually make good policy decisions. So that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that whoever gets in that position actually does a good job at doing what the position is supposed to do. And it's not helping corporations. It's actually helping the environment and making sure that we are responsible stewards of the interior. Now, look, does that involve dealing with companies and making sure that they can extract resources that are necessary? Sure. But also making sure that they do that in a responsible way that doesn't poison or destroy the environment, and to put regulations and rules protecting both the environment and business so that both, in a way, can somewhat coexist. At least that's the way that it's supposed to be. Right now, we're not doing that. Corporations massively run, all the agencies at this point, and don't care what they destroy, what they ruin, and what species they kill. So we've got to get this Trump government out. We've got 12 years to do massive change on climate change before climate change gets worse. And we cannot abide anybody in these positions that doesn't actually support something like a Green New Deal and support protecting the environment. Because right now, look, we're facing a massive, massive problem, and we need real people to fix it. Okay, so that's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation. Thank you for the super chats. I want to read one of them, actually, because I noticed that I got one. So let's talk about it. Romantic Warrior says, when did paying taxes contributing to society become unpatriotic? Just asking. I think if it's a serious question, probably Ronald Reagan, when he came up with those words where he basically said, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't quite remember the quote here, but I think he said some of the scariest words are, "We're from the government and we're here to help you." I think about the time when people started losing trust in their government. Look, a lot of us progressives have lost trust in the government too. Well, let's be honest about that. Corporations basically run everything, lobbyists, etc. So when you have low trust in the government, a lot of people are like, why should I pay my taxes to a corrupt government that doesn't actually serve us? And so both left and right do have a, I guess a part of them which says, look, we're okay with the idea of paying taxes, more so on the left than the right, I think, but it actually has to go to smart things. And it actually has to go to serve the people and not corporations or corrupt bureaucrats. So That's a good question, though. Thank you for asking that, and thank you for the super chat. All right, guys. Gotta go. TYT Nation, signing off. TYT is coming up next. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have an awesome day. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, Nation. We'll see you tomorrow.